My name is Kevin Kauffman, and I brand myself on my last name. I'm not entirely sure why, but I've always liked my name growing up, Kauffman. I thought it was a cool last name. And I think last names give a sense of belonging. The idea that you're given this name that so many people have had before. It wasn't given specifically to you, but it's passed down through your family is just fascinating to me. The idea that people hundreds of years ago were walking around with the same last name, and that's how you got your name. I just always thought, where does my last name come from? So that's the answer that I seek. So some of the information I got growing up about my last name is that it's German and that it means salesman or merchant. So my question growing up was always, if it's German, then how did the Kauffmans get here? One of the ways I started researching my family was by simply asking my grandpa, how far up do you know? Do you know your grandpa? Do you know your great-grandpa? And I started filling out a family tree on Ancestry.com in around 2013. Originally, I got super overexcited, and Ancestry gives you these things called hints. But the thing is, these hints, they give you other family members, but they might not be reliable. So I wanted to start over and create a tree, only names that I could confirm or have a reliable source that I knew were related to me. And this started when my grandpa actually gave me the family Bible. So I had the names that my grandpa remembered, and I had the names in the family Bible. From there, I was on my own. My grandpa had always told me that his grandfather Roy and his father Jay had traveled down to Maryland because they wanted to start a construction business, crane and rental, which actually still exists today, only it's not in the family anymore. Who exactly started this family business?
Jay Kauffman, my grandfather, and Roy Kauffman, his father. They bought a crane in York. I guess they started operating in York, and they drove that crane and they took it down to D.C., and that's where they started crane rental.
But they traveled down from York, Pennsylvania, so I thought that would be a good place to start out my research. And I've actually already been to York, Pennsylvania, and I'm going to show you some pictures of what I found there. There was a Kauffman-Coffman family book, which I've just bought actually, and it had the names of my great-grandfather in that book. And it had separate cards, and it had information on some of my ancestors. I was able to confirm that they were my ancestors because in the family Bible, the oldest name dates back to 1808 as Daniel Kauffman. I found a card that had Daniel Kauffman and his father, Daniel D. Kauffman, on that card. So York actually helped me find another confirmed ancestor, as well as the exact location in which my ancestors are buried. So we went. We're in the Kauffman cemetery pretty much, and apparently Daniel Kauffman, born in 1774, and Daniel D. Kauffman are buried here. We might not be able to find them exactly because the tombstones are so old, but I took pictures of the ones that I think might be it. But you just got to see that this is crazy. They're just Kauffmans everywhere. So many of these tombstones are just Kauffman. It's crazy. This might be Daniel Kauffman from 1774. It is very possible. From that point, the book gave me the rest of the names. So I bought the book myself, and I completely put all of the names that the book dates in my ancestry, as far as my direct line goes. And that's what I have here. The only names I have not gotten from the book are the two names above Jacob Kauffman III, because Jacob Kauffman III is actually the oldest name in the book, and it doesn't even list him as a third. And so this website actually told me that there was a first and second Jacob Kauffman before him, and the source of this is something by Richard Warren Davis, and the first thing I could find is this book by him, An Aid to Mennonite Family Research. You might be wondering what comes next. I solved my family history back to 1500, and I wasn't entirely sure what to do after that. But there was one word that I was intrigued in: Mennonite. This word kept popping up over and over again as my research continued, along with Amish in some cases. And so my next question is, what does it mean? to be Mennonite?
My name is Michael Petersheim. This is my wife, Mary Lois.
I'm Nathan Zook. I teach political science. I'm a professor, and I live in Washington, D.C. with my wife and 7 children.
What does it mean to be a Mennonite?
Forgiving those who hurt me, dressing modestly, being kind to others, a whole bunch of those things that are taught in the Bible. And so I would, in some ways, rather be called a Jesus follower than a Mennonite.
So being a Mennonite is a choice that people make. You're not born into the faith. You're not baptized as a baby. You choose when you're old enough to decide for yourself.
How does the Mennonite church differ from other churches?
Mennonites are one of the historic peace churches, along with Quakers, Church of the Brethren, Brethren in Christ, Hutterites, Amish. And so that means that they have historically chosen not to participate in military conflict. And that's why many came to this country, was to avoid the wars of Europe. And so Mennonites do not view themselves as being Catholic or Protestant. The name comes from a man named Menno Simons, who was a Catholic priest.
He was one of the leaders in the group, ended up doing quite a bit of writing, which we still have copies of his writings today. And eventually the people around started calling these Christians who had separated from the Protestants and the Catholics, in this area they called them Mennonites.
A lot of the people in Switzerland were under the Reformed churches, so Protestants, and they were being persecuted because they did not believe in participating in the military. They also believed in separation of church and state, which was radical at the time, because if you were baptized as a baby, that was your citizenship into the church and to your country, your canton. And so by not getting baptized into the church, by not participating in that kind of citizenship, they were outcast.
So what were the main professions?
A lot of them were farmers, and they kind of became known as being kind of the quiet in the land. They came here for religious freedom, and they're gonna just stay in the rural areas. Now in Switzerland, many of them lived in cities. Now the Kauffmans apparently settled in the Steffensburg area, so a little south of Bern, Switzerland. So they were a little bit outside of the sort of urban areas. But when they came to the New World, they were considered more rural, and that really tradition continued down many family lines.
And of course I had to ask about genealogy.
Among the Mennonites, genealogies are one of the favorite hobbies. You'll find a number of Mennonites that will compile genealogies and books of family names, trace family histories, and so one of the favorite pastimes is to play what's called the Mennonite game and figure out how this newcomer that I've just met is related to me or to somebody I know.
Can we play the Mennonite game for a second?
Sure, yeah.
We were playing it a little bit when we first started.
Yeah.
Are we possibly related?
I think so. So my great-grandmother married a Zook, and she was Ella Jane Kauffman, born in 1860, and so she'd be my great-grandmother. And then you go back 6 more generations, she's descended from Johann Andreas Kauffman, who came here in 1717 by way of Holland. So he fled from Switzerland to Germany to Holland, came to Pennsylvania, and settled in 1717 in what is now called Lancaster County, but at the time it was not known as Lancaster County. They were there before Lancaster. The Kauffmans were there before Lancaster County was called Lancaster County. So it's called Chester County. It was the far western part of Pennsylvania at the time. They brought a ship into Philadelphia. One of the original Mennonite landholders was Hans Herr, one of the first bishops in the colonies, and so he got 10,000 acres for 10 Mennonite households, and 200 acres went to my ancestor Johann Andreas, and we believe he's a brother to your ancestor Isaac. So the 2 men came over around the same time. They had farms next to each other. Later, my ancestor bought another 400 acres, had 12 children, and when he left Switzerland, he was a hose. I'm not sure the German word for it, but he was basically a pant sewer. A stitcher. He sewed pants.
So the name Kauffman is a very familiar name from Pennsylvania. My brother married Joanne Kauffman, so that's in my family. And then my brother's daughter married Joe Kauffman, so that's. I also would have, my children would have had a teacher, Matthias Kauffman. So we called him Mr. Matthias, but he was Mr. Kauffman. So yes, the name Kauffman very much rings a bell to me.
Michael, Nathan, and Mary Lois gave me so much information that I probably have enough footage to make an entire documentary's worth of interviews. But for now, I think I have enough footage to finally tell my family story completely and round off this documentary. So, Jacob Kauffman III, born in 1555, was from Schopfheim in Baden-Württemberg, Germany, where the Kauffman family had lived for a while. Jacob went to Switzerland and had a son with Annie Berkey named Niklaus, born in 1593. Niklaus married Elsie Bank in 1617 and they had children. Two of the kids were Michael, born in 1620, and his brother Johannes, born in 1617. Johannes's grandson is Nathan's ancestor, Andreas Kauffman. Turns out Isaac and Andreas were not brothers, but are still related. Johannes's brother Michael married Annie Brindelli, and they had a son Isaac, born in 1653. He was a big shot. He became a very well-recognized Mennonite teacher of his time, and was almost always on the run from the law because being Mennonite was illegal. But it seems, from what I can tell, that he escaped most persecution. He was married to Elsbeth Mergert, and they had a kid named Isaac, born in 1685, who was more of a screw-up. He fled Switzerland to America in about 1714 because he had some sort of debt owed. His brothers weren't too happy about this because the debt went to them. Flash forward to around 1717 in the U.S., and the same Isaac, along with Nathan's ancestor Andreas Kauffman, are neighbors in early Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. They're given land by this dude Hans Hare, who was giving land to a bunch of Mennonites through William Penn because he planned for a religiously free Pennsylvania. Isaac marries a woman named Elizabeth and becomes a U.S. citizen in 1727. Isaac died in 1738, and it seems his land was purchased by someone called the Governor General, whoever that is. But I was actually able to find Isaac Kauffman's original land on Google Maps, and that's what's playing right now. One of Isaac and Elizabeth's sons is also named Isaac, and his son is also named Isaac, and that Isaac marries Catherine Dullenbein. Isaac and his father seem to have died in about 1777, but I can't tell if the deaths were related. Isaac and Catherine then have a son named Daniel D. Kauffman, born in 1774, and he was a farmer and Mennonite from York County, and he married Elizabeth Wagner. They had a son, Daniel W. Kauffman, born in 1808, who seems to have married twice, to a Mary and then an Elizabeth Walk, but I'm not entirely sure which is my ancestor. Mary does seem to be listed in my family Bible, however. Daniel's son is Henry H. Kauffman, born in 1850. He also had two wives, and again, I'm not sure which was my ancestor, but their names are Magdalena Heindel and Anna Fackler. Henry's son's name is Roy D. Kauffman, born in 1890. Roy married Laura Fink and had kids. One of them is Jay, born in 1912, who traveled from York, Pennsylvania to Maryland with his dad in a crane to start a construction company. Jay married Mabel Fox. Jay and Mabel had two sons, Cliff, born around 1941, and Roland, born in 1944. When Jay died due to ALS, Mabel ended up selling the crane company to one of Jay's brothers, whose descendants still run the company today. Jay's son Roland married Lizette Pombrion, and they had a son named Michael, born in 1966. Roland went off to be in the construction battalion in the Vietnam War and came back after Michael was born. Roland and Lizette then had a daughter, Yvonne, born in 1970. Roland and Lizette got divorced, and then Roland remarried to Marie Schlossnagel. Yvonne had 4 kids with her husband John Touziant, who are my first cousins, and Michael married my mom Janine Ashley Batillo, and then my sister Ashley in 1998, me in 1999, and my brother Jay in 2006. And that is a Kauffman story.